So again, things that you know or don't know, just always good to have. The nervous system. So when we talk about nervous system, we're literally talking about how information is communicated. So if you're thinking about nerves, nerves are a basic unit of neural communication. It's how your body gets all the information that's being relayed to it and from it into the environment. So your nervous system, there are three separate nervous systems that make up the entire body. So all of our body is made up of three separate nervous systems. One is the CNS, central nervous system. That's going to be your brain and your actual spinal cord. So your brain and your cord together form the CNS. So not the nerves off of the spinal cord, just your brain and your actual cord itself. They form the CNS, central nervous system. Then we have the peripheral nervous system. After information is transmitted from our brain to our spinal cord, it's then transmitted from our spinal cord out to the body. So I need information to go from the cord out to the body. If it just stays in the cord, it's not going to help me. So I needed to go out to the body and communicate information. That out to the body is the peripheral nervous system. Those are going to be the named nerves we've already covered a lot when we did that in kinese. Femoral nerve is a peripheral nerve, musculocutaneous, ulnar, median, radial nerve, all of the brachial plexus. Those are types of peripheral nerves. They make up parts of the peripheral nervous system. Their job is to carry information from the spinal cord to the body. So it goes from the brain to the spinal cord, from the cord to the body, peripheral nervous system. And then the third one is our autonomic nervous system, which is responsible for homeostasis. That's a fancy word. I'm sure you probably have heard it already in some science course. Homeostasis, H-O-M-E-O, homeostasis. And that's the place where the body finds peace and rest. So everything is in a restful, peaceful state, homeostasis. So that's what the autonomic nervous system does. Its job is to keep that system regulated. The regulation of that system is done by the autonomic nervous system, specifically the parasympathetic nervous system. Its job is to keep us in a state of homeostasis. Everything is just cool and relaxed. If we need to have a response to something that requires us to then enact, then we then enact the sympathetic nervous system. That's the fight or flight system. It's like you got out of your car and started walking to your house and a stray dog was chasing you. You have fight or flight. You're going to figure out some way that to keep the dog from biting you, hopefully. Or if you've ever woken up because you felt like you were falling out of your chair, your heart's beating faster, you're starting to breathe fast, sympathetic nervous system is kicking in. So those are the major ones. Those are the major systems that deal with nerves. Going deeper than that, the smallest level of nerve communication or nerve function is going to be the neuron. So when we go down to the bottom of that system, so we talked about the functions of the three systems, but if we trail those systems down, the primary base of those systems starts with a neuron or a nerve cell. So this is an image of a nerve cell, an actual nerve cell. So this gives us the basic level of communication. So you have thousands of neurons forming a particular nerve. So you may have hundreds of thousand neurons inside of the body that form nerve cells that are communicating with everything inside of the brain, inside of the spinal cord, peripheral nerves. All of those have nerve cells or neurons that communicate information. So neuron, as the book tells us, is the fundamental unit of the nervous tissue. So it's a fundamental aspect. The different types of neurons are going to be described by their function. An afferent neuron, afferent with an A, afferent, and we'll get to this, it's written in another part, but in the book it talks about it early. Afferent neuron is responsible for communicating information from our body to our brain. So afferent, A-F-F-E-R-E-N-T, afferent neuron. Afferent. I'm gonna have to get me some. There it is. Yeah, afferent. Sends information from our body to our brain. From our body to our brain. Okay. Morning. So afferent neurons communicate information from our body to our brain. Now, that's better. Oh yeah. Now, wet to dry dressing. Okay. So afferent, body to brain. So, let's see here. How many people went outside this weekend? Good stuff. Okay. How many of you were wearing a winter coat? Why? How do you know it's hot? You can feel it. So something in your body was able to tell your brain, it's not smart for us to put on a thick, heavy coat to walk outside. We're going to probably pass out and look crazy. So your body was able to understand that, and it helped you to function appropriately. Same way, if I turned the thermostat down to 40, closed all the doors, and locked us in here, what would your brain find out? What would your body tell your brain? So, dealing with a cold response. So, your body constantly has sensory information. So that's where we're going with this. It's called sensory information. So your body is constantly sensing stuff, and it's constantly pushing that information to your brain so your brain can respond appropriately. The major things that you're sensing constantly are pain, touch, temperature, tickle, itch, proprioception. Yeah, those are good. Pain, touch, temper, tickle, itch, proprioception. So those are your major sensory things that your body senses all the time. The reason why sitting all day for you does not cause you to have a skin breakdown on your bottom is because while you're sitting, you're adjusting in your chair constantly so that your body does not allow pressure to build up on one tissue and break down. That's pain. If I walked over to you and pinched you on the back of your arm, you go, ow, stop. How do you know I'm pinching you? Pain. Touch, whether it's light touch, you ever have a bug land on your arm and you can feel it scrolling across the hairs on your arm? You're like, freaking bug. Touch. Or direct touch, if someone touches you, comes up from behind you and touches you. So whether it's superficial or deep touch, you feel that. Temperatures, it is what it is. Tickle and itch, global sensory. If you have your arms up, someone reach under your arms and pushes in your arms, stop it. You're ticklish. Anybody does not have a tickle response? Some people don't. So everybody here does. There you go. We're all normal. Okay. Itch is what it is. Proprioception. Let's describe what proprioception is. Proprioception is your body knowing where it is in space. So the reason why you're able to find upright posture and you're not just sitting like this, slumped to the side, is because of proprioception. It's your body's ability to sense where you are in space. You don't have to look in a mirror to know if you're sitting upright and straight. Your body tells you that it's upright and straight. There's another part of proprioception called kinesthesia, and that's going to be understanding where your body is in space with movement. So when I move, I'm able to move appropriately. You have mimic ability. You know where your body is in space in relation to movement. That's called kinesthesia. But those are the things that your body senses all day long, just depending on situations. So those are your sensory areas. So your body will pick up that information, and then it's going to carry that information from your body up to your brain, and then your brain processes it and figure out what you need to do about it. That's called afferent, going from the body to the brain so that the brain can correlate a response. Afferent. Efferent is going to be when the brain sends information to the body and gives it directions. So efferent, if afferent is going from the body to the brain, efferent goes from the brain to the body. And it carries with it motor information. And just like the motor does in your car, causes it to move, motor info is what causes your body to move. So every time your arms move or your legs move or your eyes blink or your toes curl or your knees bend or your heels come off the ground when you're taking a step, or your back extends, whatever you're doing, any kind of movement you do has to be done because an efferent connection where information goes from your brain to your body demanding it move. And so it's quicker than the blink of an eye. That information is sent to your body and tells it what to do. It's done in milliseconds. Faster than you can blink your eye, information is communicated from your brain to your spinal cord out to the peripheral nerve. Okay? So that's motor. Any kind of movement you do comes from an efferent system of motor control. So a person who is paralyzed, you ever see people who have paralysis, or a paralyzed person loses communication of the efferent system. So the efferent system goes from the brain to the spinal cord to the peripheral nerves, then to the muscle. That's how that system runs. Brain to spinal cord to peripheral nerve out to a muscle. That's how that system rolls. If we have a break in this system, then we can end up with some type of paralysis. So people who have spinal cord paralysis, they don't communicate information from here to here. They may get it from the brain to the spinal cord, but it never leaves the cord to get to a peripheral nerve. So if it can't get to the peripheral nerve, it can't get to the muscle. If it can't get to the muscle can't move on its own. So I am essentially paralyzed. Does that make sense? So that's where paralysis comes from. Okay? So that's afferent, efferent. That's going to be important because we do different parts of E-stem looking to impact different parts of this system. Some stuff we're going to do because we're trying to deal with afferent issues. Some stuff we're going to do because we're trying to deal with efferent problems. So knowing that will help you understand what you're getting ready to do. Okay, so the book tells us a neuron itself consists of about 3 different parts. It's going to consist of a cell body, an axon, and a dendrite. Cell body, axon, dendrite. So I guess that's purple. What color would y'all call that? I don't know. Sure, call it pink. Works for me. The pink looking thing to the left is the cell body with the nucleus in it. That's how information is communicated. So that's your cell body. The book lets you know it's a central structure containing the nucleus. It supports the cell's function. Without a cell body, we don't have a smart enough cell to communicate information. So we have to have that. It's the essential function of that part of the neuron. Then we have axons. These conduct impulses away from the cell body. So they're pushing information away from the cell body. They're trying to get information from the cell body to other parts of the body. And then we have dendrites, which are responsible for receiving information. So they're picking up information from other neurons and transmitting the information down the line. That's called profligation. So not a term that you have to know, but if you ever hear it, just know, they're talking about how information is traveled in a neuron. Okay? Okay. So, the last sentence is important. Electrical impulses that control the body's functions are generated within a cell and then travel along the axons to different parts so that it finally reaches the area it's supposed to reach. So it's going from axon to dendrite and keeps passing that information along like a chain. So a nerve is like a long chain. Keeps passing the information along. Okay. Some nerves are covered in something called myelin. Myelin. Myelin is a sheet of fatty substance that surrounds the nerve, and it helps it to conduct information faster. So myelin is one of the best things to ever happen in patients or in people in general because it helps to conduct information faster. Think of myelin as your body utilizing...
The client review was brutal.
Yeah, think of your body utilizing myelin like a text message versus you having to drive to somebody's house to deliver a message. So just imagine, imagine back in the day, really far back, so way before my time, if I had to get you a message, I would have to jump on a horse and buggy and ride to your house to get you a message. How long that would take. Versus now, if I need to get you a message, I can shoot you a text message in under a minute. So myelin is the text message. Non-myelinated is the horse and buggy. Slow, progressive, continuous. Myelin, information superhighway. Stuff happens at the speed of light.
We're going to be underwater for weeks.
Welcome to 2 Minute Neuroscience, where I simplistically explain neuroscience topics in 2 minutes or less. In this installment, I will discuss myelin. Myelin is an insulating layer that surrounds the axons of neurons. Composed primarily of lipids, myelin helps to prevent action potentials, which are the electrical signals that travel along axons, from decaying due to electrical current leaking out through the axonal membrane. Myelinated axons thus conduct action potentials more quickly and efficiently than unmyelinated axons, and because of this, many neurons in the nervous system are myelinated. Myelin does not cover an axon fully. Instead, there are intermittent gaps in the myelin where the axon is exposed to extracellular space. These gaps are called nodes of Ranvier, and the sections of myelin that are adjacent to the nodes of Ranvier are called internodes. The nodes of Ranvier are rich in sodium channels, which open in response to an action potential traveling down an axon, allowing positive sodium ions to rush in. This influx of sodium ions rejuvenates the action potential and helps to prevent it from dying out as it proceeds along the axon. Because the nodes of Ranvier are not myelinated, however, the action potential slows down at each node and speeds up as it travels along the myelinated internodes. This gives the appearance that an action potential is jumping from node to node, which is known as saltatory conduction. Myelin is formed by glial cells, but the particular type of glial cell responsible for myelinating axons is different in the peripheral and central nervous systems. In the peripheral nervous system, glial cells called Schwann cells form myelin. Each Schwann cell wraps around one segment of an axon many times to form one internode. In the central nervous system, oligodendrocytes form myelin. One oligodendrocyte can produce dozens of internodes on multiple axons. Because myelin is white, myelinated axons appear white and make up what is known as the white matter of the brain. We can see the importance of myelin to healthy neural functioning when we look at diseases where myelination is disrupted. In multiple sclerosis, for example, deficiencies in myelin disrupt neuronal communication, resulting in a variety of physical and psychiatric symptoms.
Good stuff. Okay.
Dave's field communications are all over.
Guess which student has a better chance of getting...
Okay, so that's the goal of myelin. So again, it is a covering around the nerve, and its job, that you can see the myelin there, its job is to allow for communication to speed up. The sheet of myelin, again, like it says, is not continuous, which is a good thing, because we can have degradation of myelin at one part, but not the whole thing. So you don't want it to all be myelinated. You want some breaks in there so that it does not cause a disruption once we get different breakdowns of myelin dealing with different conditions. But the breaks inside of the myelin area are called nodes of Ranvier. So nodes of Ranvier. That's how that's pronounced, Ranvier. So the nodes helps to ensure the communication gets from one myelin sheath area to the next. That's what you want to think about with node of Ranvier. It helps it to get from one part of the myelin sheath to the next part as it's traveling down the axon. So it's a helper. So myelin is going to play a distinct role in some of the things we're going to be learning, specifically when we get to chapter 2 and start talking about why we use E-stim to do certain things. So we use especially with pain treatment. So it's important that you get this, because we're going to start talking about certain types of cells that are coated with myelin, cells that are not coated with myelin, and how knowing that is the basis for what we're going to use as a pain treatment methodology. So this will be important soon, I promise you. I know you're thinking, why am I learning this crap? I'm not gonna ever use this. But foundationally, I'm putting in the foundation. I swear to you, once we're done, you're gonna go, oh yeah, that's why that makes sense. I get it. Okay, so again, myelin helps to communicate information faster. It doesn't have to slowly work its way down an axon to communicate. It can jump nodes, so it doesn't have to go node to node to node. It can jump from one node at the front all the way to the node at the end if it needs to, so that information is communicated faster. Some information you need communicated quickly. If you lay your hand on a hot stove, do you want your brain to communicate that information to your hand slowly? Hot stove, yeah, maybe you want to possibly move your hand. You want your brain to be that slow when you're getting ready to do that? No, you want to get your hand off as soon as possible so it doesn't burn your hand off. If you're driving and someone pulls out in front of you, you want your brain to communicate to your foot slowly you need to hit the brake? Maybe we should hit the brakes soon. No, you hit your brakes quickly so you don't slam into somebody. So some information needs to be communicated fast. Myelin is what helps that information to do that. So we have myelin. All right. The next part, nerve transmission. So again, transmission goes from one neuron to another one, and it occurs at a place called a synapse. So the synapse is the place where where a nerve will finally meet its final destination. So it's going to be information moves down the nerve cell, and it's finally going to reach its destination. And that destination is going to be wherever it's going to be, but it's going to get there through a synapse or a connection. So synapse is just a fancy word for connection. It's going to lock in to wherever it's connecting to or wherever it's going. If we're doing efferent communication, then our synapse is going to be the neuromuscular junction. Neuromuscular junction. Break that down to what it's saying. Neuro, nerve, muscular, muscle. The place where the nerve meets the muscle, the neuromuscular junction. That's going to be the place where, if we're doing efferent, information is going to communicate. Neuromuscular junction. Ah, crap, I hate that. Okay. So the neuromuscular junction is where information from our nerve cell will.
If you're a first or second year med student taking anatomy and you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed because of how much information there is to learn.
Welcome to 2-Minute Neuroscience, where I simplistically explain neuroscience topics in 2 minutes or less. In this installment, I will discuss the neuromuscular junction. The term neuromuscular junction refers to the synapse between a motor neuron and a skeletal muscle fiber. Activity at the neuromuscular junction is essential for the contraction of skeletal muscle to occur, and even just to keep muscles from atrophying. It is also the site where synaptic transmission was first studied, and thus is the best understood example of chemical signaling in the nervous system. When a motor neuron approaches a muscle, it branches out into several extensions that end in areas called synaptic boutons, which can release neurotransmitters. These synaptic boutons are situated over a specialized region of muscle called the end plate. The synaptic boutons are separated from the end plate by a space called the synaptic cleft. The end plate beneath each synaptic bouton contains several deep indentations called junctional folds. These junctional folds contain high numbers of ligand-gated ion channel receptors for the neurotransmitter acetylcholine. When an action potential travels down the motor neuron, it causes the release of acetylcholine into the synaptic cleft. Acetylcholine binds to acetylcholine receptors in the junctional folds of the muscle membrane, which causes ion channels to open to allow positive sodium ions to flow into the postsynaptic cell. This produces a depolarization of that cell, called an excitatory postsynaptic potential, also known as the end plate potential when it occurs at the neuromuscular junction. This depolarization leads to the opening of voltage-gated sodium channels, which causes the end plate potential to lead to an action potential. This action potential travels along the muscle fiber and causes contraction of the muscle. The enzyme acetylcholinesterase is also present at the neuromuscular junction. It breaks down acetylcholine and in the process terminates its effects on the muscle fiber, thus ending the communication between the motor neuron and the muscle fiber.
Okay, so a little more neurology than probably needed, but it gives you the basis, showing you how efferently information is communicated from the nerve cell to the muscle at the neuromuscular junction. The release of acetylcholine helps with that, so we have those things that are important to do. But it happens at the neuromuscular junction through a synapse. Information going afferent synapse in the brain on different parts of the brain. So your brain has different areas where information will synapse, whether that's in your frontal lobe or your parietal lobe or your temporal lobe or your occipital lobe of your brain. There are areas of the brain where information will ultimately synapse or connect. And we'll talk about what areas those are. But synapses are the way information leaves the nerve that's communicating it or leaves the instrument that's communicating it and then gets to its final destination. It has to synapse on something. So it's going to make a connection somewhere. So synapses are very important. So efferent, neuromuscular junction. Afferent, somewhere in the CNS. It's going to synapse. Information synapses somewhere in the CNS. We'll tell you where when it's relevant. So don't worry, I promise you. You'll get to know where. Okay? So that's what we talked about there. The two different types of neurons, we've already kind of gone through that. We're not going to re-go through that again. This is showing you how information is communicated. So when you're looking at it, this is a spinal cord section. So what you're looking at here is a spinal cord section. So imagine if we take a spinal cord and we chop it in half and we're looking down on it like this. So we're looking inferior on the spinal cord. This is the image we would have. So if we took a section of the spinal cord, we literally chopped it in half and looked at it under a microscope, this is what it would look like. Every section would look like this. So it's a spinal cord section. Why is that relevant? On the ventral end of the spinal cord, you have motor information. So ventral is just another word for front. Remember we talked about dorsal ventral. I was like, you only use dorsal ventral for certain specific things. This is one of those times. On the ventral end or the anterior part of the spinal cord, that's where efferent or motor information is communicated from. So on the ventral side, you get motor. On the dorsal side, that's where information is coming from the body into the spinal cord. So dorsal horn deals with sensory, ventral horn or ventral area deals with motor. So dorsal or the back side of the spinal cord, yeah. It handles sensory info. All sensory comes into the dorsal or the posterior aspect of the actual spinal cord, back here in the back. So if you drew a line through the middle, if you take a line and draw it through the middle here, right through here, right where the central canal is, so this will be the line in the middle. Everything from this end is going to be dorsal, and it's going to be responsible for processing sensory. Everything anterior or ventral to the central sulcus is going to be handling motor. So the cord is was designed to have very specific functions, and it processes differently. Okay. And now, that information can be carried by either one peripheral nerve or multiple peripheral nerves with an S. So one nerve may have sensory and motor functions. Some nerves may only have motor functions. Some nerves may only have sensory functions. Remember back when we were doing kinese, we were learning about the brachial plexus. We talked about the medial antebrachial cutaneous, the medial nerve to the arm and the medial nerve to the forearm, medial antebrachial cutaneous, medial brachial cutaneous. Those are sensory nerves, and they only carry sensory information. They have no motor function. All they do is send information to your body about this part of the body. They're cutaneous nerves. Whereas some nerves, which we'll talk about, will have both a motor and a sensory function. So it just depends on the nerve. But whether it has both or only one, the information is processed in different parts of the spinal cord once it comes in. Sensory goes to the dorsal end or the posterior aspect of the cord, and then motor comes from the ventral or anterior part of the spinal cord. So that's how we're communicating information. Okay? All right. So sensory nerves, again, start in the body, and then they refer information from the body to the spinal cord. And they do that by running information through a very functional system inside of the body called the dorsal root ganglion. So this one, yeah, there it is. Yeah, dorsal root ganglion. Let's go back up. So dorsal root ganglion, or on this thing it's called the posterior root ganglion. Same difference. Oh, how I missed my pointer. So dorsal root ganglion, right in here. This is the processing center for sensory information. So the dorsal root ganglion is the processing center for sensory information. It tells the brain, or it tells the spinal cord where to organize the information so that it can be sent to the right place. Because not all sensory information is processed the same. Some stuff need immediate action. Hand on a hot stove, that needs immediate action. Ants biting you on your arm, you don't need to process that for 2 or 3 minutes. Let me let this ant continue to bite me while I figure out what I'm going to do. No, I need immediate action. Ant bites, kill it. Mosquito bites you, kill it. Some stuff needs immediate action. Some stuff needs processing. You need to figure out how you're going to deal with it. So the dorsal root ganglions, its job is to assign the responsibility of where information goes so it knows how to deal with that information quickly. Whatever it is, it's helping to process the information. So just think of dorsal root ganglion as a processor. Okay? All righty. Now, that leads us to how information is communicated in the body. How is information communicated? There are 2 ways things could be communicated in the body. We have a global system and then we have a specific system. So we have a global system and we have a specific system. This will be page 67 for those who are looking. Where am I going? So we have a global system, we have a specific system. How information is processed. Global, specific. So if I say global, what do you think of when you hear global? Everywhere. There you go. This is how stuff gets processed over the whole body. It's global. Global. It's going to hit the whole body. All the body will be processed in this way. Then we have very specific parts of that global system that we'll deal with. So for test 1, we're going to learn the global system, and that's called dermatomes. Dermatomes. Dermatomes are simply areas of skin over the body where sensory information is going to be communicated from to a specific section of the spinal cord. So the spinal cord is going to process sensory information. We can't send all sensory information to one section of the cord. You'll overwork it. That's just like sending all the power that's available into one outlet. What's going to happen if you put too much power into an outlet? It's going to short it out. Or you're going to throw a breaker. You ever throw a breaker in your house? That's what happens. You run too much power to one section of the house, and the house goes, wait, we're going to break down. So it throws a breaker. You go out, you unplug some of the stuff, you flip the breaker, stuff goes back to normal. So your body is that way. It'll throw a breaker if too much sensory is getting into one section. So to keep it from doing that, the body is spread out into multiple sections where information is picked up and reported. They're called dermatome areas. And they collaborate over the entire body. Your whole body has a dermatome section that is responsible for it. So if you look on page 68, I like the one on 68 better than I like the one that I have here. The one I have here gives you kind of more detail, but I like the one that's in the book on page 68 a little bit better. That's my favorite dermatome map. Now, let me say this. There are going to be 55 examples of dermatome maps. At least. I found at least 20 for real. There's about 20 or 30 maps. So you're going to get a bunch of them that are similar, some that are different. It's okay. We just want to have global area. So the one in the book on page 68 is probably the closest dermatome map that I have seen to the actual map that I'm looking for. So let's go through it and talk about things specifically. The map is designed to be understood intelligently. So I don't want you to get overwhelmed staring at this going, I'm not even going to learn all of this. I'm going to fail. You're not. I'm going to help you think through this. It's actually easy to understand. So the way it works, the skull, when you're talking about skull, ears, head, these areas, skull is C2. So C2, the C2 area of the spinal cord receives sensory information from the skull. C3 is going to be the neck. So you want to write these down. These are called global areas where things happen. So C2, skull, posterior. C3, neck. C4, proximal shoulder. So from the chest out to the proximal shoulder. So 2, 3, 4. Skull, neck, proximal shoulder. Look at that. You already made your way down the body. Now, 5 through T1. Listen to me. This is going to help you because people get this wrong every year. So I'm going to help you. 5 through T1. If you look at the body in anatomical position, this is why anatomical position is so important. This is where it's really going to pick up. The dermatome map is going to go lateral to medial. If you just think of that, it's going to be hard to screw this up. If you miss that, you're going to mess it up every time. So it goes lateral to medial. That's where we're going. The numbers are going to start going lateral to medial after we get past C4. 2 has a specific area. 3 has a specific area. 4 has a specific area. From C5 to T1, T2, it's going to go from lateral to medial. C5 will be shoulder, lateral forearm, or shoulder to elbow. Most times we say that, shoulder to elbow. So C5, shoulder to elbow, lateral. In all capital letters, put lateral. Because I don't want you messing this up. People screw this up every year. There's going to be something on your test about this darn dermatome map. It's going to be there. I know the person who writes your test. I swear. I met him before. He's an interesting guy. Take my advice. It's going to be on your test. C5, shoulder, lateral to the elbow. C6, forearm, lateral, down to the index finger. So it gets the thumb to the index finger. So lateral, forearm down to the index finger, lateral. Thumb, index finger. It's going to get those two. That's C6. C7 is the finger you would use to give someone a sign that you weren't happy with something they said. Your middle finger. Literally. You woke him up. He's like, really? Can't be that. That can't be. I swear, it's the middle finger, C7. So, if you want to be coy with someone, they're getting on your nerves, like I'm going to C7 you in a minute. She got it. You got it. Y'all are waking up now. It's coming. That's okay. People get the C7. That's a good joke. All right. C7, middle finger. Middle finger is C7. C8 is going to be the fourth finger, fifth finger coming up the medial aspect of the hand. So it's going to get the rest of the hand down to about this area. So the fourth finger, fifth finger coming up the hand. C8. So we got C5, shoulder to elbow. C6, forearm to index finger. C7, middle finger. C8 is going to be fourth, fifth finger down to the wrist. T1 is going to be medial forearm. Medial forearm for T1. Medial forearm, T1. T2 is going to be medial arm coming up to the armpit. So it's going to go all the way through the pit and wrap across the chest for T2. Then on the posterior aspect, 5 still gets most of it. You can look there on the thing. 5, 6 gets exactly what we said. 7 gets exactly what we said. 8 gets exactly what we said. T1 gets exactly what we said. So it still looks the same on both sides. Don't get it confused. Nothing goes crazy. Now, the trunk, it's going to be impossible for you to know all those layers of skin of the trunk. So we have very specific areas of the trunk that we know, that we can use to identify area. Okay? So T4 always aligns with the line of the nipple. And before you try to get me fired, no, it does not matter the position of the tissue, whether it sits at T4 or not. The line of the nipple is still T4. I get that question asked to me every year for some odd reason. If it doesn't make sense to you yet, once you think about it, you'll go, yeah, that's smart. Yeah. So the line of the nipple, still T4. No matter what position it's found in, the line of the nipples, T4. T10 is the umbilicus, the belly button. No matter the person, any or outie, T10 is the umbilicus. There you go. You'd worked your way through half the body that fast, learning the dermatome map. It wasn't that hard. Okay, so let's go through the lower extremity. When you think of lower extremity, it's going to be the exact opposite of the upper extremity. So upper extremity, we worked lateral to medial. Lower extremity, we're going to work medial to lateral. So lower extremity, medial to lateral. So L1 would be the area of the groin. Not the genitals, just the groin. L1. L2 would be anterior thigh. L3 would be medial aspect of the knee. So we're crossing the knee on L3. Medial aspect of the knee is L3. L4, anterior knee down to the great toe, or the big toe. Okay. So this is, yeah. So anterior knee down to the great toe. L5, lateral knee down to toes 2, 3, and 4. So lateral knee, 2, 3, 4. S1 is going to be the lateral leg in digit 5. So it's going from medial to lateral. Mm-hmm. Yep, the 5th toe is S1. Oh yeah, we're gonna come around. Yeah. I like to get the front part of the leg, then I get the bottom part and the posterior leg on my wraparound. Good question though. Okay. So then once you flip it on the posterior aspect, it kind of gives you some really interesting stuff. This map, this is kind of where I like the map here because it kind of gives you more clarity. So use this one use the one that's on here to get the posterior aspect of the leg. So it's the only part of this map I don't love is the posterior aspect of the leg. So lateral hip coming down the leg from the lateral side, lateral hip and leg, L5. So that's almost out here, coming down the lateral side of the hip. Then posterior lateral hip and leg will be S1. So the full lateral, L5. Posterior lateral, back here, right here, a posterior lateral, S1. Posterior medial, S2. And then you have some interspersings of a little bit of L3 here, but the big parts is the lateral ankle under the posterior part of the foot is S1. The medial, well, a part of the medial is going to be L5, so toes 2, 3, 4 will be L5. A little bit of, we're not going to get to that. So toes 2, 3, 4, L5 with that strip coming up. Toe number 5 is S1. Yeah, this one is a more accurately drawn posterior leg dermatome map. The books is excellent for everything else. Probably the best one I've seen drawn. Combines literally a lot of the best maps that are out there. If you type in dermatome map under Google, you're going to find about 8 or 9 that comes up pretty easily. But this one does an excellent job in collaboration with the book. So this one, I like it more for posterior leg. It kind of gets a little confusing up here on the trunk, but it's not terrible. But I think it does the best job on the posterior leg. The anterior leg says the same thing we were saying already. So it's not different. It just gives better clarity to the posterior leg. Okay, so that's the dermatome map. That's the global system of sensory information. So if something is going on with your body in any one of those areas, it's going to communicate that information from that area to that part of the spinal cord so that it can then relay it to where it needs to go. So it's going to communicate it from that area of the body. So let's do afferent. I just did the one from efferent. So area of the body to the dermatome. to the spinal cord section, then ultimately question mark. And that question mark is going to be based on wherever it needs to go. Does it need immediate action or does it need processing? Some stuff needs immediate action. It's going to form a loop right there in the spinal cord and then go back out to a motor response. Some stuff need processing from the brain. So it's going to go up to the brain, and then the brain will coordinate a motor response. So it just depends on how fast of an action do we need. Some stuff needs to happen almost reflexively, quick, in a hurry. Some stuff needs to be processed. Just depends on what information is needed. All right, that's a good place for a break. And we'll come back. It's 9:06. Let's give you a few minutes to get your brain. We'll take about 7 minutes. We'll come back about 9:13. Time my clock here. Got to find my blasted, I say. Gotta